Some time ago I produced a video titled Replace Your Workmate Benchtop for Under $10, and I put the link to that video in the description below. In that video I shared with you how I made custom panels to replace those found on the Workmate 425 and 550. Several of my viewers have asked if I would make a video showing the dimensions for both the panels and the dog holes. This video is in response to their request, so let's take a look. First, let's take a look at the width of the panels. Now, you're going to notice the first panel closest to the handles is not as wide, and that's so when you crank it open, it's not going to interfere with the handles. So that one is a 2x8 cut down to a little bit more narrow. So what is this? This is 4 3/4. So you got to rip that 2x8 down to 2x4 3/4 for that very first panel. So I'm leaving it here for a second so you can see the size. So now we go into the second panel. That one's going to be just about, what, 7.5 there? 7.5. And of course, I'm not going to rip the 2x8, so it's going to be just shy of 7.5. So you can see the dimension there. It looks like about 7 3/8 or 7 1/4. Now the back panel on the original Workmate, panel, the last one, is a little bit wider. So this one you'll notice is 8, what is that, 8.5? Yes, 8.5. So I didn't buy a larger panel. I decided to stay with the 2x8 on the back panel. So that's again going to be just shy of 7.5. Okay. So there you can see the width of the panels, and I'm going to show you a little bit more in a second. I've had several people ask me about the distance between the carrier holes, especially on the front panels. And if you have the original panels, that's fairly easy to figure out because all you've got to do is mark them off on your new wood, okay? If your original panels are either lost or they've warped to the point where they don't fit anymore, then what you have to do is you have to measure it against the frame. The reason I say that is sometimes these frames end up getting bent or distorted. So if you don't have the original panels to measure by, to set this out by, you're going to need to measure the width between them just in case your frame has been distorted over time, it got damaged in shipping, or too much weight on it. So again, if you don't have the panels, the original panels, you're going to have to measure the distance between the slots. Now the distance from front to back on the carrier holes you can measure. So if you notice here, that's not going to change. You don't want it to interfere with the handles. So that's what? 3.5. So that's going to be 3.5 on both the right and the left-hand side. So from front to back, 3.5. Okay? So on the width, you need to make sure that you measure that out separately. Okay? So let's go on to the next two panels. So the second and third panels are the same. So if we look here, this comes in right at about 2 1/4, right at about 2 1/4. Doesn't have to be exact, but that's going to give you good placement for both panel number 2, the middle panel, and the final back panel. That's how far it's going to be from that leading edge for both of these two panels. Same thing here on this back panel. So you can see they're almost identical. Doesn't have to be precise because you're going front to back, but if you want the panels to fit in nice and snug and give you the right dimensions on clamping, that's what you need to be able to do. Okay? Now let's take a look at the placement of the holes. The panel itself, I decided to go with 29.5 inches, which is a little bit wider than the original panels. And all I did was go to the center and mark off the center there. So I would have 5 rows of 2, okay? You may decide to go with only 4. The second hole in from the left or the right is 8 inches in. And of course, that hole is 1 inch in from the left and from the back. Same thing with the front. That's 1 inch on the X and Y axis and all the holes along the edge are 1 inch. They're set in 1 inch on center, okay? And then all I did is take a straight edge and mark that line for all 5 of those rows all the way back across all 3 panels, and then drilled it out, okay? So as you can see here, what I did was I've got a front row and a back row. Those are each 1 inch in from the edge. And then all I did is draw a line down the center for the third row in the middle, okay? And then all I did from there to get those slots is define what the middle was and cut 4 4-inch slots in there to make that panel into a bench pull. And finally, on the back panel, I carried the same pattern all the way across. I didn't put any slots in there for a bench pull. Obviously, if you wanted to do that as well on the back panel, you could do it there just like I did on the center panel. Let's take another look at the slot and the bench pull. All I did was find the center, measure out to get 4 inches, drilled 2 holes, and then used a saber saw to cut those out. And again, if you wanted, you could do the same thing for your back panel. I have a playlist in the description below that contains a list of about 50 different Workmate workbench videos. So please check it out. It's in the description below. If you like this video, please press like and of course share with your friends. If you're not already a subscriber, I would love to have you as a subscriber. And as always, good luck on your projects.